Do you remember the family dinner in 2019? You sat at the end of the long mahogany table, the one they only bring out for holidays. You tried to speak about your new project, a tiny spark of an idea you had been nurturing for months. But your cousin interrupted you mid-sentence to complain about the humidity. You were a ghost at your own table. You were the person people forgot to invite to the Friday night drinks. And when you did show up, their eyes passed over you as if you were made of glass. The blue bubble on your phone screen was your only consistent companion, messages sent to friends that never changed to read, or worse, were met with a dry, one-word response 3 days later. You were furniture. You were background noise in a world that only listens to the roar of the winners. You realize then that in our modern, hyper-calculated society, your humanity is invisible unless it is wrapped in a high net worth. To the world, you were a zero, a placeholder, someone taking up oxygen while the people who mattered made history. You sat in the shadows of their vibrant conversations and watched the way their faces lit up when they spoke to someone who had already reached the summit. It wasn't that they hated you. Hatred requires energy. They simply didn't see you. You were a human being with a beating heart and a mind full of fire. But to them, you were just a punchline without a setup. The silence of your phone wasn't just a lack of signal. It was the deafening soundtrack of your social irrelevance. Part 2. The obsession. You didn't scream, and you didn't beg for their attention. Instead, you moved into a damp, windowless basement and decided to cut the world out before it could finish cutting you out. You embarked on 14 hours a day of pure, unadulterated obsession. Your smartphone, once a source of anxiety, became a glorified paperweight. No good morning texts arrived. No, how are you? Calls broke the silence. There was only the low, steady hum of the hard drive and the blue, flickering light of the monitor at 3 a.m. reflecting in your bloodshot eyes. You ate cold noodles straight from the cup and drank bitter, lukewarm coffee, building a digital empire in a room that smelled of concrete, dust, and isolation. While they were at the club spending money they hadn't earned to impress people they didn't like, you were in the trenches, investing time you didn't even know you possessed. You stopped trying to find a seat at their crowded table. You decided to build your own room. Every line of code you wrote, every sales email you sent into the digital void, and every cold rejection you received was used as high-octane fuel for the fire growing inside your chest. You didn't want to be accepted anymore. You wanted to become a force of nature. You wanted to become so successful that ignoring you would be like trying to ignore a hurricane. You learned to love the solitude because, in the absolute silence, there was no one left to tell you that you were wasting your life on a dream that would never come true. You traded your youth for a chance to own the future. Part 3. The tipping point. Then, the breakthrough happened on a Tuesday in October, a day that started as ordinary as any other. The contract was signed in a flurry of digital ink. The wire transfer hit your account like a physical blow. 7 figures appeared on the screen. Then, within months, it scaled to 8. Suddenly, the silence of years wasn't just broken, it was shattered by the incessant, rhythmic ringing of your phone. Your LinkedIn account exploded with notifications. A barrage of connection requests from people who wouldn't have shared an elevator with you a year ago. Individuals you hadn't spoken to in a decade were suddenly just checking in to see how you were doing and remembering the good old times that never actually happened. Your old boss, the man who had fired you for being unfocused and unreliable, sent a formal invite for a high-end coffee to discuss synergies. The world hadn't changed, and the person looking back at you in the mirror hadn't changed either. But their vision of you had been corrected by the lens of profit. You were the exact same human being who had sat ignored at the dinner table. But now you had a price tag they finally knew how to read. The validation started coming in waves, but it had a sharp, metallic, false taste to it. You realized then that these people weren't celebrating your character or your struggle. They were celebrating the utility you now represented to their own ambitions. The ghost had suddenly become a god, not because of a change in soul, but because the numbers on a spreadsheet had shifted in your favor. Part 4. The Access Fee. You walked through the same high-end cafe where the baristas used to ignore your existence. Now, the owner recognizes the brand of your shoes before you even reach the counter, and your favorite table is permanently reserved. The same people who used to look straight through you now strain their necks to maintain eye contact for a second too long, hoping for a nod of recognition. The friends who were always too busy to help when you were struggling on the floor are now suddenly too busy trying to find a way into your inner circle. They lie to you with a practiced, oily ease that almost feels like a compliment. They look you in the eye and swear they always knew you had it in you. You smile and nod, playing the part, but inside you are witnessing the grotesque transparency of human nature. You realize that success is the only filter that reveals who people truly are. They don't love you for your mind or your journey. They love the access you can provide to the life they want. They love the shadow your massive tree now casts, and they want to sit in it. You have become a trophy, a story they tell to make themselves look more interesting by association. "I know that guy," they say with unearned pride at parties, completely forgetting that the guy they claim to know almost starved to death in a basement while they were busy looking the other way. You are no longer a person to them. You are a destination, a resource to be mined, a human bank account that they finally want to open an account with. Part 5. The Final Perspective. You sit in your glass-walled penthouse now, high above the noise of the city. The view is spectacular, a panorama of lights and motion, but the air up here feels cold and remarkably thin. You look down at your phone, the same device that stayed silent for 3 years, and it vibrates constantly, a relentless battery of demands, requests for favors, and empty, hollow praise. You finally understand the cruelest irony of the climb. The most valuable thing you ever possessed was the time when nobody cared about you. Because back then, the few people who stayed by your side were real. They weren't there for the access fee. They were there for the human being. Now, everyone is a fan, and absolutely no one is a friend. You were ignored when you were just a man. And now you are worshipped because you have become a financial asset. You reach the top of the mountain only to realize that the climb was the only honest part of the entire journey. You have the $1 million watch on your wrist, but you find yourself missing the days when the hours didn't have a specific dollar value attached to them. You won the game, you beat the odds, and you own the building. but you lost your faith in the sincerity of the world around you. You turn off the phone, watch the city lights flicker like data points on a map, and realize the only person who was actually there for you the whole time was the ghost they chose to ignore. You are rich, you are successful, and you are finally, truly alone in the palace you built to keep them out.